Hello, this is my video to show the disassembly and then reassembly of a standard version 2 gearbox. This one is rear wired. So the first thing to do is to remove the screws. And depending on which manufacturer it is, you may have a screw here to undo. This one doesn't. Then you want to get a thin screwdriver, put it in the hole of the spring guide at the back here, push it in, and you keep that pressed down. You also want to press down on the cylinder by using another screwdriver to in the motor hole to just pop it open slightly. And then once you can get your fingers in, lift it off. The spring's not going to go anywhere because you've got the screwdriver in. Then you lift the spring guide, pull it out. Inside you've got the spring guide, the spring, the tappet plate spring, air nozzle, cylinder head, cylinder, piston head O-ring. If you're putting in a new spring, make sure that if it's a non-linear spring, make sure the tighter coils go over the spring guide. That's so that when it compresses, it extends the life of it and there's less chance of any damage. You've got your sector gear, your bevel gear, and the spur gear. You've got your trigger and trigger spring. You've got your anti-reversal latch and anti-reversal latch spring. Then you have, let's find the right screwdriver, 2 screws here to undo and a spring here. So if you remove that spring, undo these 2 screws. You can remove the trigger assembly, trigger contact assembly. So you've got the shuttle and the connectors housing, and the other screw allows you to take out the cut-off lever, which is in quite good condition. So the reason why I'm opening this one today is I'm putting in a new shuttle due to wear on the shuttle there. It's not wanting to focus. Come on. No. But you can roughly see just about how this comes to a point, and this one's worn down. So that's what I'm putting back in. Take out the wiring. Then you've got this screw here. This is for the safety. You take that out. I'm not overly sure of what the names of these are. So you've got the spring for it, the bar, the bit that connects with the selector plate, and you've got the cut-off lever spring. Once all the gubbins has been taken out here, so this bit has been removed, you can remove the selector plate and change it for an M4 or an MP5, whichever one you need, or whether it just needs a new one. So this is for my MP5. So putting it back together, put the selector plate in. Next is this piece, which goes through that hole there. Then you need the spring for it, and the bar. So the spring goes over the bar like so, and then back onto it. You'll find that it's a square hole with round edges, so you'll get it positioned right. Then you need to put the screw back into it. So then it's ready to go. You get your housing and cut-off lever. Putting the cut-off lever in first. So the hole in the cut-off lever wants to go on this little raised bit here. And then screw it back down. Most gearboxes you can tighten it right down, but some, if you tighten it as tight as it'll go, it'll stop the cut-off lever from moving properly, so make sure it's free moving. Then get your trigger housing and trigger shuttle. This is my new one going in. That sits on the top of the runners on the housing. Push it all the way in so it's fully connected. Stops it dropping out. Now you want to push it in at an angle. And push it down. It's got a locating pin and hole at the top as well. Once you've done that, put the screw that holds that back in. Next is the shuttle spring. So loop it over the top. You can just about see that it's got two tabs sticking out, and it fits between those. And then pull it back over this rod here. Make sure it goes all the way down. Push the wires in, so the wire that goes across the bottom, in this case this red wire, wants to go at the bottom. And the other red wire comes over top, round and through this gap here. And same again, the red wire's on the bottom and the black one comes down through the gap. Next will be the spur gear. Make sure you've got a bushing in there, mine's still attached to the bottom of it. So, followed by my sector gear, which I need to put the bushing in, so I'll just drop that in. If you've opened it for the first time and you're keeping the same gears, just make sure that the shims go back where they came out, if you can. They'll stick to the gear or stick to the bushing, so you should be alright with that. If not, I will be putting up another video on shimming. Next I'm going to put in the cylinder, piston, tappet plate, air nozzle, in case you wanted to see those come apart. It's really simple. So you've got the tappet plate and the air nozzle. The air nozzle has a groove and the tappet plate has a slot that will fit into that groove. Just press it into it. Then it's got a hole in it. Goes over the brass cylinder head end. Brass cylinder head end is quite literally just pulls out. So I'll put that in. Making sure that the tappet plate spring hoops back over this hook and then over the pin. Check it moves freely. So making sure that the tappet plate moves freely and that the sector gear teeth aren't at the top, the ones that engage with the piston. To disassemble a piston and the piston head, separate them, there is a screw at the bottom that you can just about see. If you unscrew that, then it just all falls apart. So that goes back in there, making sure that the groove is in contact with the runner. Next, the spring coils to the back, goes into the spring guide. Not putting it under tension yet because I've still got other bits to put in, and if I put it under tension it'll try and spring out. Next I'm going to put in the trigger. So the trigger spring, this little L bit goes through the hole on the trigger, like so. Come on. So that goes into the hole here. The pin goes into that hole. The raised bit on the trigger goes into contact with the shuttle so that it can push it along. Now sometimes they want to jump out, this one's wanting to jump out, so I'm not very fond of it now because it makes it a whole lot harder, especially when you've got the anti-reversal latch which will also want to jump out, and the spring as well. A little tip for putting the anti-reversal latch in, however, is put magnets, and quite strong magnets underneath it, and it will hold it in. Alternatively, if you rest a screwdriver holding it down, then it's less likely to jump up. I'm going to try without either because I'm not overly sure where my magnets are and the camera is in the way of the screwdriver. Wait for that trigger to go ping. So putting that in, the anti-reversal latch into the hole there. Now I'm going to put in the bevel gear into that last bushing. Now I need to bring the anti-reversal latch as far back as I can and try and hold it there. And dare I say it, it is currently holding, which is awfully decent of it. Now I'm going to try and put the spring guide back into the gearbox. The back of the spring guide has two bars. They sit, as it is sat now, vertically, one at the top and one at the bottom. The reassembly is definitely the hardest part. These springs just don't like it. So once that's located, I'm going to stick a screwdriver into the back of it like we did when we disassembled it. Hold it all down. Now the top of the gearbox sits back over the bottom of the gearbox, and making sure that all the bushes are in the holes, the anti-reversal latch is in its hole, the trigger is in its hole. There is a hole inside the cylinder head that a pin on the gearbox sits into, so you might need to press that down. Sometimes the tappet plate will get caught, so if you just push it in, if it's not going quite in, it feels to be balancing somewhere around here. Press in the middle where it feels like it's bouncing and push the air nozzle in. It pushes the tappet plate back, and sometimes that allows it to go together. So now that it's all back together, just put the screws back in. Like so. You can thread lock them, because I'm constantly seem to be going in and out of my gearbox, as this is my high rate of fire one, and I keep getting little upgrade parts such as the bearing spring guide that's in it. That went in last week, and the new trigger shuttle is in today, so there's not much point in me thread locking them. However, if you've done a job and it's finished and you've got all the parts in that you want in there, then I would recommend thread locking them shut. It just stops the screws working loose over time. I did have a DMR once, and when I eventually got around to taking the gearbox back out after I'd made it, I mean this was about 2 years later, I went to undo all the screws and found them all to be extremely loose, which isn't ideal. You lose air compression because everything's free to move about and not connecting properly, and it also increases wear on your parts, so the shims aren't actually doing anything to keep the gears aligned and meshing properly. So once all the screws are back in, if you turn the gearbox over, all you've got left to do is put the cut-off lever spring back in. So you'll have a little bar sticking out, point sticking out inside this gap on the selector plate. This one snapped off, and also on the cut-off lever itself. So if you put it on the cut-off lever, and then you'll have to use a screwdriver to bring it back, keep your thumb over this end so that it can't ping off, and just gently let it go back onto the bar on the selector plate, and you are done. If you've got a quick change gearbox, so you can take the spring guide out of the back, it makes it a lot easier. You take the spring out before you open up the gearbox, you put the spring in after you've finished putting the gearbox back together. It's just one less thing to fight with when it's all going back together. They're normally a flathead screwdriver or an Allen key, and you just push them in, twist them, normally 90 degrees, and then let it out. Keep it controlled. I've had one fly out and almost take my eye out before, so if you want to wear safety glasses, then I don't blame you. So that's it. Reassembly and disassembly of a version 2 gearbox. I hope it helped. If it's front wide gearbox, the wires come out through that gap there instead of at the back. And that's about it. Push the air nozzle in, and as long as it returns, you know you've got that spring in, the trigger, spring, because they can be a bit temperamental. Pull it back, let it go. If it returns, then that's in properly. If not, you might have to reopen the gearbox and make sure that it's not this side of the shell, make sure it's inside the gearbox. Other than that, you are now ready to put it back into your gun. So I hope this helps. Thank you very much for watching.